There is no one-size-fits-all democracy. I hold the view that each society's system of governance must be informed by her realities. When we talk about democracy, even here in Africa, we use foreign tongues. We are speaking in English, therefore we say democracy. Some will be speaking in French. I always ask people in Africa, in your mother tongue, what is the word for democracy? And I'm much more comfortable with the word governance. How do you govern yourselves? The post-colonial African state finds ourselves sometimes in a very difficult position because you are a multi-nation state. You go to a country and you find different nations which historically had different governance systems. But we have chosen after 1963 to make good of what we have. We have a lemon, we make ourselves lemonade, if you allow me that analogy. So you allow your specific circumstances to define how you are going to govern yourselves and to make sure that the governance system you use is acceptable to the critical majority of the people. Will it be perfect? No. Perfection is a goal that we aim at, never achieve. The history of post-genocide Rwanda after 1994, so far is good. And I use the word so far. Let us not imagine that things have been solved for all times. There are forces within and without Rwanda that would want to disturb the calm that is there. And we must be eternally vigilant to ensure that those forces are not given the oxygen to thrive. Being aware of that, it is also important to embrace systems that try to include. In the case of Rwanda, one of the things that I think can inform governance itself is how Gashasha was used. Look at the tribunal in Rwanda, which was based in Arusha. If we had been following that model, how many people would have been tried? And even if you convicted people, how would you have restored calm in the society? But when the society took the view and went back to the history of Rwanda and said, we have a system. This system says that if you committed a crime and you come out and admit that crime, you who are the perpetrator of the crime, we will rehabilitate you. If we could use that and deploy it in the manner in which we organize our affairs, then I think we can solve many problems. I hold the view that it is important to learn those lessons and always to remind us that even when there is good, evil is alive and well, seeking to destroy the good. So our guards must be up and our guards must remain up. We have now turned the art of complaining into a science, and we must stop that. We must tell our story and invest in telling that story. We don't. So that we as it were, wedded to what we call international media, to BBC, France, Al Jazeera, and all these. And we can keep on complaining until the cows come home. So the time is now for us to have media that tells our story, because that is what we want the world to know about us. Are we investing in that? We are not. If we look at some of these things regionally, for example, within the context of East African community and within the context of the African Union, and we are able to tell our stories, even to articulate our understanding of governance as being specific to our circumstances, then people will begin to consume that story.
Yeah.
We don't. So I think the time has come that we must stop agonizing and begin organizing. I watch news about Africa in different media, and you can see that people invest in this thing. You have somebody, whether you like them or not, in Al Jazeera. He's actually based in Kigali. But take any typical African media, They'll be in Nairobi and reporting about an event in Rabat, Morocco. They don't know what is happening. They're just listening to other media, and then they pick it up and present it as their own. In conclusion, the time is now. Tell our story. Tell it in a manner that is believable. Let us have the story backed with verifiable evidence, and in the fullness of time, people will begin to understand and embrace our story because it is evidence-based and verifiable. The post-colonial African state is very fragile. We must never forget that, because if you look at any typical post-colonial African state, as I said a little earlier, you have nationalities, nations divided. So if you look at the situation, for example, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, you'll find one ethnic group on either side of the border, whether it is in Rwanda, whether it is with Burundi, whether it is with Central African Republic, whether it is with Angola, whether it is with Zambia. So alive to those realities, what must be done? In my view, we must rethink governance. If we don't rethink governance, then we are not going to resolve the issues. As early as 1940s, an African-American, John Henry Clark, said that all African countries, when they regained their independence, they inherited systems of government, and they tried to mimic those systems of governance, and he said, none of them will ever succeed on the basis of such mimicry. So what must be done? Countries must deliberately make efforts. If it is the Democratic Republic of Congo, I believe an all-Congolese Congress to rethink constitutions and how we are going to govern ourselves. How are we going to accommodate traditional governance systems? How are we going to define governance? If it is Rwanda, if it is Burundi, it is not a comfortable conversation, because there are people who are also invested within the current power structures. The political elite thrive, they have become multi-billionaires, they have power, and they love these systems of governance. But the reality is, if you look at many African countries, the message that is emerging now, if we don't rethink governance, then many of these countries are going to collapse. You can see. Look at what is happening in Sudan today. Less than 1 year, potentially you can create 4 different countries. How are you going to resolve it if you don't have a conversation? It is not going to be easy, but it is a conversation that we must have. If we don't have it, we are merely postponing the problem. And it's not unique to Africa. Look at Europe, what was used to be the Soviet Union. They had to grapple with that issue. Look at India after independence. They had to grapple with that issue. The emergence of Pakistan, the emergence of Bangladesh. Look at Latin America. So these are issues that we don't want to discuss, but I'm telling you, we've got to discuss them. Cast your eyes over the map of Africa, and I conclude by cast your eyes on Somalia, cast your eyes on Ethiopia, cast your eyes on Sudan, cast your eyes on Cameroon, cast your eyes on the Democratic Republic of Congo, cast your eyes on Nigeria, and answer that question for yourselves. If we don't resolve it now, future generations will have to resolve it, either by force or through negotiations. Thank you.
I'm a king, yes, I'm a king, I think I'm a king,